This is the WTF Bach podcast.
Right, that work those fingers.
The podcast about Johann Sebastian Bach, brought to you by his prodigal son, WTF Bach. Join WTF Bach as he guides your mind through a contrapuntal journey. Why don't you let WTF Bach guide you? And now, here's WTF Bach.
Evan Chinner's here. If you thought I wouldn't be hopping on the royal social media boom from the Queen's funeral, well then you were not correct. Though this episode was certainly not planned, I'm in the middle of preparing my Listener's Choice episode next, but for this amazing piece of information brought to my attention by one of my listeners in London, so thank you for this spot. The list of composers played at the Queen's state funeral in Westminster Abbey is, as one might expect, a rather British outfit. Orlando Gibbons, Vaughan Williams, Peter Maxwell Davies, Herbert Howells, Edward Elgar, and more British composers, and then one foreigner, Johann Sebastian Bach. Indeed, Bach made the cut. Even his German compatriot and contemporary Handel, who lived and died in London, mind you, didn't make the cut. That at least would have somehow made sense to the London lineup, but no, Bach's music alone has found its way into this very patriotic display. Bach, the clear outsider, the only outsider. And it's little details like this that fuel us Bach lovers. We feel that way about him too, that no matter how tangential the connection, no matter how we can get him in, he's joining the party. And not only there in the party, but the last piece of music played in Westminster Abbey. I don't, of course, want to offend or upset anyone because I tend to be a bit grandiose when it comes to these things. But that's just it. That's what it is to me. Bach's inclusion in this funeral is a profound statement. It says, after all the ritual, after all the talk, after even all the music, Bach. I wonder what the discussion was like. Was there any pushback? Was there any dialogue? Was there a discussion that went something like this? Gibbons, yes, very good. Elgar, of course, and Bach? Bach wasn't British, was he? No, sir. Well, did he work in Britain? Well, no, sir. Well, did he at least ever come to Britain? Not at all, sir. Well, sir, it's Bach. Well, all right then. I think Bach is included because he transcends national boundaries, because his music defies occasions, unites different beliefs. All music, after Bach anyhow, owes something to him. As Charles Gounod, the French composer, said, if all the music written since Bach's time should be lost, it could be reconstructed on the foundations that Bach laid. But enough empty talk. What piece was it that organist Matthew Jorysz, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, excuse me, Jorysz, Jorysz, assistant organist at the Westminster Cathedral. What piece was this that he played by Bach? It was the Fantasy for Organ in C minor, BWV 562. So let's discuss the music and nothing further about the occasion, and then later when the Queen's funeral is playing on repeat, you will be in the know and can impress all your drinking buddies.
Wow, that's fabulous. This is WTF Bach.
Firstly, where is this piece located? How does one find this music? Well, within the Neue Bach-Ausgabe, the New Bach edition, it's found in the 4th series of books, those which print the organ music, in the 5th volume. And there are 2 volumes of preludes, toccatas, fantasies, and fugues, and this is the 1st volume of those 2. These volumes are organized by key, as the Well-Tempered Clavier or the Inventions and Sinfonias are. So first you have preludes and fugues in C major, and then those in C minor. Now, this is one of the first things you would notice if you crack open the score, that this fantasy is attached to a fugue that is unfinished. The fugue breaks off in the middle of the 27th bar. So one might talk about the organ music in the business, say, oh yeah, you're playing that fantasy? Oh, you mean the one with the unfinished fugue? Yeah, that one. And oddly enough, there is a fantasy and fugue for harpsichord that also has an unfinished fugue in C minor. And you can hear me talk about that very interesting fugue in the performer's commentary on my latest album. A link is in the description. But back to the organ piece. A mere cursory sweep of this work's chronology shows that the incomplete fugue was written after the fantasy, and it's not quite agreed that these 2 pieces were even meant to form a pair. So let's only focus on the fantasy, as indeed that was the piece by Bach played at the funeral. I'm going to try and plunk through this piece on the piano, though as any piano player playing organ music knows, that's only a sometimes rewarding experience and mostly a frustrating one. In any case, The piece begins with the lowest note, a low C in the pedal, and this is often the biggest pipe in the organ. The most left note on the pedal board, and the organist just plops down the left foot for 8.5 bars. While above this drone, the fantasy itself dances. So allow me to put a drone here in the computer. This wonderful 7th chord here on bar 10. Just imagine the power of the organist walking up from the F to this A flat and running into that C minor chord. So indeed, this melodic idea is what comes from the very top of the keyboard, again, over the lowest note in the pedal, and it descends from the top like a fugue. Soprano, alto, and now tenor, and now bass. This comes down very organized from top to bottom. Finishes in G, as we saw there. Then the organist picks up the foot, plops it again down on G, and then we have something similar. We're now in the key of G minor as opposed to C minor, although the voices are not coming from top to bottom, nor are they coming exactly from bottom to top. They're sort of coming out of order. Bass, alto, tenor, soprano. Following what he did at the beginning of the piece, moving from the key of C minor up a fifth to G minor, he does the exact same thing. He moves from G minor and then up a fifth to D, but now a very Bachian thing happens. The pedal, which has, as you've seen, been doing very slow moving things, mostly holding drones. Now the pedal takes up the theme. You have to imagine walking this over a keyboard with your feet and playing these lines. But what's more is that the counterpoint in the hands, they begin to play sort of a secondary theme. So we have something that sounds like this. While over this exact same melody. And so the two are connected like this. However, this will also come in stretto. Very difficult to play with two hands, but essentially we have what sounds like this, now in 3-part counterpoint. flat major. E flat is the relative major of C minor, so we're a long way from where we used to be. We're now in this wonderful... And I don't know if you heard that in the 3-part counterpoint that was sort of the dialogue between the right hand, the pedal maybe, and the left hand, with the secondary theme. When it stopped, in other words, when the missing 2 voices came back in, they came back in a perfect canon with the theme that we heard at the beginning. I'll illustrate that and speak over it. Here, this is 3-part, right hand, left hand, foot dialogue, and now the 4th voice and the 5th voice. And watch what happens when, again, the organist puts down the foot on the E flat, and then we have this beautiful music. I don't know if you heard this beautiful dissonance. And then here we're at bar 42, and this is the first time when the organist lifts up the foot, and then we have about 7 bars free from the burden of the pedal, and we have this gorgeous music. There, the foot comes back in. And did you see how fast it went from just the bliss of E flat major to just the despair of F minor? And then the foot will enter again, or both feet. And then we have F minor. That is our next pedal point. So far we've had a pedal point on C, and then one on G, and then one on B flat leading to E flat, and now we have F. And the music here is quicker, our first 16th notes. It's painful to keep stopping and starting like this, but we're in the middle of in the pedals, and that will coincide with this diminished harmony here. And then our feet are going to become very active. They're no longer holding drones. They're playing quarter notes. And not only quarter notes, chromatically ascending quarter notes. And what happens over those chromatically ascending quarter notes? The ultimate contraction of this theme. He takes just this appoggiatura motive, this sighing motive, and uses only that over these chromatic rising notes in the pedal. And then from there, we have a series of long sighing notes in the soprano and the alto. And then what I find is the most expressive line in the entire piece is bar 69. I mean, you jump the octave. Just before the ultimate pedal point, which is again, very bottom note, the left side of that organ, your left foot just sitting there as you play the ultimate bars. Let's listen to this ending here. to love how Bach uses that. The appoggiatura is the last gesture in this piece. It's the one that started it, and it's the one that finishes it. Over, of course, the pedal points, which have been sort of the structure. So now, let's listen to the entire thing from the beginning, and I will speak over it. Top to bottom, fugal-like. Here's the tenor, and the bass, over this big pedal point, just the left foot. And now walks the foot up. That's our first statement. Now we restart. In the dominant, out of order, bass, alto, tenor, and soprano. Now we're a fifth higher, and the feet begin to play with this expressive long gesture in the hands. 3 parts now, in canons, imitation. You can hear one voice in each speaker, by the way, the pedals in both speakers. And now here's the canon, beautiful. And now we're on the pedal point, which leads us to E flat major. Beautiful pastoral quality of this music. And now E flat major. We've arrived. Safe. Now the pedal takes a break, and the hands take off, alone. Those crunches, these half steps, and then the bass. And now F minor, quicker music. And now quarter notes in the pedals. And this motif, super condensed now. Sopranos just holding these long notes. And now the alto too. And this expressive line. And here comes the final bass note. Boom. And one virtuosic flourish. Wonderful piece. I didn't know it as well as I do now until it was played at the Queen's funeral. It reminds me, actually, of the fantasy for harpsichord, which could possibly be for organ as well. The one in A minor. Now, as for the true organ versions of this, I typed in all of the MIDI versions so you could hear a voice in a separate speaker, but it goes 2 ways. People either play this music very sort of soft and tender with few stops, and then you have someone like Marie-Claire Alain, a very important organist in the 20th century, French organist, who plays it with just everything pulled out. And she swings it actually. Listen to this. Just listen to the difference between the interpretations of 2 organists. Okay, same piece. Now here's Martin Luther. So that's the first phrase, the same piece by Martin Luther, still living, still flourishing today. And the first was Marie-Claire Alain. I'll put these names in the episode description as well as the links to the full performances. But I'll leave you with one of my personal favorites, Helmut Walche. He's not the most scholarly by today's standards. In fact, not many people play the organ like he does anymore. But there's something in the way that he approaches the organ music of Bach that I just like, and I hope that you enjoy as well. And that'll be it for this episode. So now, you know what piece of music was played at this funeral, and thank you for listening. Next episode is the listener's choice episode, so you have one last chance to send me your suggestions for the pieces you want me to look at and speak about, and I will do just that. Thanks for listening.
WTF
You are listening
Bach. To WTF Bach.
We appreciate you listening.
Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the WTF Bach podcast.
Send us a donation on Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at WTF Bach.
Find the links in the episode description. The WTF Bach podcast.
Your support is tax deductible. Evan Shinners is the founder of New Call Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit which performs classical music in atypical venues.